In this video, we're going to be going over Python variables. A variable is defined by a name and a value, and it gives us a very easy way to store and retrieve values from our computer's memory. So perhaps the easiest variable to start with, or variable type, there will be different types of variables we'll cover, is the string type. So I use the hashtag of the pound sign to make a comment in my code, so this won't actually run. I'm letting us know we're working with a string or strings, and in parentheses I've put the name of the class that strings are built for. In a future video we'll talk about classes and objects, but for now it's sufficient to think of a class as a blueprint from which many similar things can be built. So any string typed variable will have behaviors similar to all of the other string type variables. So let's go ahead and make a variable now. We'll make a string variable, and a string, for those of you who aren't familiar with that terminology, is essentially just text. Anything that can go down on paper. So we'll start with string variable 1. And to define this variable, or the text we want in this variable, we use either a single or a double quote. So our text goes here. Let's make this a sentence. Now for our next variable, let's just quickly demonstrate. We can put numbers in here. Wow. And let's use the double quotation mark on that because we can. Excellent. So now we've looked at two different string type variables where we've made the variable name and then used the equal sign to assign the text we've put inside of our single or double brackets. Okay. Now there are also numbers, which include integers. So there are different number typed variables. We have integers, we have floats, and we have complex. So we have integer type numbers. So let's make an integer variable. We could do a 0, 1, 2, anything that's countable, like a countable number. It's an actual integer from math. You can do a float variable. And I'll call this 1 because I'm going to show two different versions. Let's do pi. And for float variable 2, let's do that same 13, but add a level of precision. So float variables have precision associated with them. So here we have 13, as in there are 13 shoes in the closet. But here we have 13 with this little decimal, meaning we're not sure exactly, maybe like it's 13 degrees outside. And then finally we have our complex variable. And this is a variable that stores complex numbers as its value. So we can do 2 plus 3j. So we notice the 2 is our so-called real part, and 3, the j denotes the so-called imaginary part. So quickly, I'll say this one is an int. I'm just going to comment my code so we know exactly what's going on here. These two are floats, so that's a float. Let's call this one a float as well. And this one is complex. So those are the different number types. We also work with lists and tuples in Python. So our lists come from the list class. That's the name of the class. And I'm going to show you a couple different lists. So we're going to make a shopping list. So this is still a list variable. We're going to make a shopping list. And on this, let's put bananas. Put apples. And let's put eggs. So you'll notice we have 3 instances in this list. all separated by the comma. So the comma represents a new instance in the list. So you have bananas as a string, apples as a string, and eggs as a string. Now, you can put almost anything, any object can go inside of a list. So instead of just doing strings, let's do one with the numbers we defined up on lines 7 through 10. So we can put a 13 in here. 3.1415, 13.0, and 2 plus 3j. So now we have a list that's built of different number types. So we have it's built of integers, floats, and complex numbers. And finally, let's look at a list that's actually built out of variables. So this list and the one above it will be identical because integer variable has the value 13, so it's equivalent here. Now I'm going to build this list vertically because it looks better. It's equivalent to building it horizontally. What matters is that things are between their square brackets, and each instance of the list is followed by the comma. Great. Now let's look at a tuple built from the class named tuple. A tuple is essentially a list, except for it's immutable, and to build it, you use parentheses instead of square brackets. Immutable, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we look at lists, tuples, and sets in their own video, but immutable means you can't change the object itself. So once a tuple is defined, it stays that way unless it's completely redefined. And finally, we have sets. And what a set does is it takes in an iterable and returns in an unordered fashion all of the unique values of that iterable, aka it returns the set of the iterable you give it. So let's go in here and put in a 2. Oops, 2, 3, 3, 1, 1, and 5. We'll stay with the 6. So here I've just made up a list, and if I take the set of this list, essentially it will return 1, 2, 3, and 6, but in no specific order. The last two variable types we'll look at are dictionaries, which come from the class named dict. And we'll just do an example of a dictionary variable using this shopping list we built. So dictionary, this variable is going to contain keys and values. So in the same way that we use a Python variable to access a value stored in our computer's memory, we can use a key to access a value stored in our dictionary variable. So in our case, the key might be bananas, and the value might be 6, meaning we want to pick up 6 bananas from the store. The next key might be apples, and that value will be 12. And we'll say the next key is eggs, and that value is going to be a dozen. And so to build this dictionary, we use the curly brackets. The key goes first, just like the variable name goes first, and the value is assigned using a colon, and so we get bananas and 6. And we'll go over dictionaries in their own video because they can be kind of complicated. And then finally, we're going to look at two different Boolean built from the bool object. I'm going to make a variable named evolution. We're going to assign that Boolean true, actually. And we're going to make another variable called vaccines cause autism. and we're going to assign that the Boolean false. And so now the variable named evolution is Boolean type with the value true. Up here, the variable named dictionary variable is dict type with the value being a dictionary. And in that dictionary, we have keys with their associated values. So we have like a hierarchical structure. We have the variable named set variable, which is set type. And in here, it will be a set built from this list. We have our tuple variable and our list variable of tuple and list type. We have our different number variables. Our complex variable is complex type. And no, it doesn't have to be named complex variable. I could name it A, B, C, D. And as long as it has a complex number being stored, as long as it's assigned that value, it'll be complex type. So A, B, C, D is also complex. And then finally, we have our string variables, which are string type. So in the next video, we'll go over how to use strings and numbers and the types of operations we can do with them. But for now, I think we're good.